rolling pens from the Dollar Tree are amazing. Let's see how we can transform them into something just a little bit more high-end. Hi, my name is Katie from Lady Red Crafting, and let's get started with craft number 1. For this craft, I'm starting with the Falling Leaves rolling pen from Dollar Tree. And I'm going to remove the raffia bow on the front and the sticker on the back side of this. Then using my zip sander, I just sand off any of the leftover residue of the sticker from the back side of the rolling pen. Now using some painter's tape, I'm going to tape around the rolling pen handles. So once the handles are completely taped off, I grabbed some paint, and this paint was burnt umber, and I believe it was apple barrel paint, and we just coated this until it was covered completely. It did take 3 coats of paint to get this to look the way I wanted it to. You can see by just changing the color of the handles, it already gives it a more elevated look. But we're going to take this another step further, and we're going to do something on the back side of this rolling pen. So I'm taking some paper, this is scrapbooking paper, and I'm using a glue stick here, and we're going to glue a piece of scrapbooking paper on the back side of this rolling pen. And I cut the scrapbooking paper slightly bigger than the area of the rolling pen, because what I'm going to do here is I'm using a popsicle stick to smooth everything out. And when everything is dry, I grab my zip sander, and doing a downward motion, I sand the paper off of the rolling pen. So once we're done sanding, it's going to look like this. And we could just stop right here. It already is elevated and looks a lot better than when we bought it, but I want to take it up a level. So I'm going to put this on a paintable surface, and I grabbed a stencil, and this stencil is self-adhesive. And it says Hello Pumpkin, and this comes in a set from Amazon of 6 different stencils. I'll put a link below in the description box. And using Redesign chalk paste in the color Kingdom Moss, I'm going to squeegee over and paint this Hello Pumpkin sign. We could stop here, but you know I'm going to take this another step further. I grabbed some ribbon from the Dollar Tree, and I made a bow out of it. And this is a pretty fall ribbon that came out this year with little pumpkins all over it. Next, I'm going to grab some Mod Podge, and I'm just going to use that over the top of this paint to seal everything in. After the Mod Podge dries, I noticed that there's a little paint spot from the Hello Pumpkin stencil. So I decided to take a little piece of hot glue and a cute jute twine bow to cover that up. Now I'm going to flip that over, and I'm going to add an identical bow on the other side of this rolling pin. And now we have a cute reversible rolling pin that you can add to your tiered trays, or you can add to any of your house decor. Craft number 2. Moving on to the Give Thanks rolling pen. I really liked how this one looked. I think this was actually my favorite one out of all of the different rolling pens that they had at the Dollar Tree, but I did want to improve it a little bit. So we are going to remove that ribbon and the sticker from the back side of this pen. And if you noticed, I was using my hot tool to help loosen up some of that glue, and that does help a lot with removing some of those items. Next, I'm going to grab my blue painter's tape, and what we're going to do here is just tape around the handles on this rolling pen, because I want to paint the rolling pen handles a different color. And I grabbed burnt umber from Apple Barrel, and I thought the darker color would just give it a richer look. So we're just going to go ahead and paint over the rolling pin handles here. It did take me 3 coats to get a nice coat over the top of these. So I don't want you guys to have to worry about watching that. So with the magic of videos, we'll just have that all done for you in just a moment here. So now that all that paint has dried, we'll just remove the blue painter's tape. And I'm going to flip this Give Thanks over to the back side. And once we do that, we're going to put that on a paintable surface here. And I'm using my Waverly chalk paint in the color Sandstone. And I'm going to do a nice thick coat on the back side of this rolling pin. And this paint covered pretty good, and I only had to do one coat. Next, I grab my heat tool and I just give it a quick dry. Now while that is finishing drying, I grab a napkin, and this napkin I did get on Amazon, and I'll put a link in the description box below. I use a small piece of blue painter's tape so that I can separate the top layer off of the napkin. And we're going to decoupage this onto the back side of this rolling pin. So using my Mod Podge in matte, I'm just going to go ahead and paint the back side of this rolling pin. So once all of that Mod Podge has dried, I'm going to grab the napkin and we're just going to position it over the top of the rolling pin, and we're going to find a nice print on the napkin that we like, and then we're going to stop and cut a rectangle out of the napkin about an inch bigger than the actual rolling pin on each side. And once we've done that, we're going to lay that right down on top of the rolling pin, and I just grab a piece of parchment paper and I lay that over the top of the napkin, and using my iron, I just go ahead and iron that napkin right onto the Mod Podge. And that iron heats up that glue. If you haven't tried this before, it's amazing. And the napkin sticks to the rolling pin just perfectly. Next, I grab my zip sander, and if you haven't watched my videos before, it's one of my favorite tools in my toolbox. And I just start sanding in a downward motion. And I like to do this because, I don't always cut a straight line. And if I have the paper a little bit bigger, I just get this nice little edge, and it just fits perfectly by sanding that at the end. And I really like how that looks. And if you notice there, I just had to touch up a little bit of paint on the handles because of the sander, but it looks great. Next, I grab my Mod Podge again and just do a nice top coat over the top of this napkin. And this ribbon's pretty wide. It's a little bit over an inch. And so I decided that I wanted to just cut lengthwise down the ribbon about 9 inches down, and then I just make 2 smaller ribbons. And what I'm going to do here is just make 2 basic bows, and we're going to go ahead and hot glue these onto our rolling pin. And I'm going to put one on one side for Give Thanks, and then I want to put the other one on the other side of the rolling pin, right about the same spot as the opposite side, just so that way it kind of gives it more of a seamless look. So either way you flip the rolling pin over, it just looks beautiful. This lovely rolling pin is now ready for your tiered tray. On to craft number 3. Now we're on to the Hello Pumpkin rolling pin. For this rolling pin, we are going to start by removing the ribbon and also the label in the back. But for this one, we're going to go ahead and tape the handles on this pumpkin rolling pin off, and we're going to paint the actual rolling pin. So we're going to cover all of the orange paint here. To make this a little bit smoother, I am going to sand off the words Hello Pumpkin, just so that the paint will cover more evenly over the top. So I'm just using my zip sander real quickly and just going to sand those letters right off. It takes just a minute to do this. Now I'm just going to go ahead using my Waverly chalk paint in the color Elephant and paint both sides and the ends all in gray. I found these fun letters at Walmart, and you get 60 pieces in one bag for $2.66, so I thought that was a pretty good deal. And I'm going to pull out the word thanks, and I'm painting this in my Waverly chalk paint in the color white. And while those letters are drying, I'm going to remove the painter's tape around the handles on the rolling pin. And we'll use the same Waverly chalk paint in the color white, and we'll go ahead and paint those handles. This will give it a nice stark look against that gray paint. And now that those rolling pin handles have dried, I grabbed my stencil, and this one says Hello Fall on it. And it doesn't quite fit the way I wanted it to on this rolling pin. So you can see that I'm using some painter's tape to cover up the areas of the stencil that I don't want to use. And I'm going to use my chalk paint in Vintage Lace, and I'm going to go ahead and just do the hello portion of the Hello Fall. After I've washed my stencil and the paint has dried, we're going to do the fall side of the stencil on the other side of the rolling pin. And we'll use the same technique as we did earlier by covering up the stencil with painter's tape for the parts that we don't want to stencil. Just continue this method using some of the little leaves so that I can make it say Hello Fall with a whole bunch of leaves falling everywhere. And if you make any mistakes with the stencil, it's really easy to just go over it with some gray paint and hide any of those mistakes. And once that paint has dried, I'm going to grab my Jolene finishing wax and a lint-free cloth. And I'm just going to wipe a nice coat over the top to seal everything in. And once that's dried, I'm going to flip the rolling pin over, and I'm going to add the word thanks to the back side. And I'm just going to offset them a little bit, and I'm using some hot glue and some wood glue to attach these letters. Once everything's attached and dried, I wanted to distress the letters a little bit and give them some more dimension. So I'm using some of that gray paint again, and I'm just dry brushing over the top of these letters. And now for some finishing touches. I'm going to add some plaid bows on either side of these rolling pins. And I'm just going to hot glue them right next to the rolling pin handle on the same side, so that way it looks uniform when you're flipping it over on either side of this rolling pin. I just love how this reversible rolling pin turned out. Now here's a final reveal of all 3 rolling pins upgraded to the next level. Thank you again for watching. Please remember, craft more, stress less.